Hi, Brother Wilson. This is my video for my lesson plan. I'm going to be teaching Bryce how to play tennis. So to start with, Bryce would be in the late childhood developmental stage because he's 11, almost 12 years old, so that's late childhood. For my lesson, there will be a lot of focus in the psychomotor domain since we're playing tennis. And I want Bryce to be able to serve a tennis ball. That was one of the main things he wanted to learn how to do. And I also want him to be able to perform some of the basic tennis strokes so that we can play an actual game of tennis. Within that, though, my main focus on my lesson will be teaching him how to aim and being able to control the ball more, because it's fairly easy to hit the tennis ball with your tennis racket, but the more difficult part is actually getting it where you want it to go. Cognitively, I'll be teaching Bryce the rules of tennis and how to keep score. So cognitively, I want him to be able to remember those rules and the scoring and to be able to keep score in an actual game that we'll be playing. That also ties in with the social part of my lesson, because once he knows the rules, he'll be able to go and play with other people and be able to keep score and know how to play the game. Morally, looking at Kohlberg's stages of moral development, Bryce would be in the conventional stage. So I came up with two different moral dilemmas that I wanted to give to him. The first one, I wanted to ask him, give him this situation. In tennis, when your opponent serves or hits onto your side, you get to call whether it's in or out. They don't really have refs calling it. So if he's playing someone and his opponent is on their game-winning point and they serve and it's in, but it's very close to the line, so he could call it either way, would he call it in or out? And then my other dilemma would be to ask him, if his opponent was cheating, what would he do? Because also in tennis, you call out the score, you keep score yourself. So if he has an opponent that's giving himself extra points, would he call him out on it? Would he let it go? So I'll ask him that, and then I will also have someone come with me to the lesson to play against him, and they'll give themselves extra points to see what Bryce does. And then for my pre-assessment, I did ask Bryce if he'd played tennis before, if he knew the rules, and from what he told me, I want to focus my lesson mostly on making sure he knows all the rules and how to keep score, because that's one of the main differences with tennis, is the score is very different. You start at love and go 15, 30, 40. So I wanted to make sure that he had that. And then he also said he wanted to focus on serving, so I will focus mostly on teaching him the techniques to getting his serve in. And then also when we actually go to the lesson, before we start, I'll ask him to point out the boundaries of the tennis court or tell me any other of the basic rules that he may know, just so I can see where he's at. And then I'll also ask him to maybe practice a serve or two just to see where he's at and what I need to help him with. For the understanding goals, I put that I want him to be able to understand the rules and the scoring of tennis and have him be able to remember those fairly easily. And then I also want him to understand sportsmanship and the importance of that and what that means exactly. For the performance goals, since we're mostly focusing on serving and actual physical playing of tennis, I thought it would be appropriate to ask for him to get at least half of his serves in after helping him a bit. That'll depend also on, I don't really know how good he is already at it, but we'll see once we're there. And then if I think he's can get more than half in, I may challenge him to get more than that in. For another performance goal, while we're actually playing tennis, I want him to be able to accurately keep score without asking for help, and then also model good sportsmanship while we're playing. For the defining characteristics of tennis, a couple things that set it apart are the height of the net, the actual tennis ball that you play with, screen and the size of it and everything. You don't play tennis with other balls like golf balls or baseballs. You have to use a tennis ball. The boundaries for tennis would be one of the defining characteristics. Also, a tennis racket is different from like a badminton racket or a ping pong racket. And also the way that you score in tennis, how you keep track of points, would be one of its defining characteristics. Correlational characteristics would be it's a sport that you play with a ball. There's a net, and you also hit the ball with a racket. That would be a correlational characteristic because there are lots of other sports that you play with a racket, like racquetball or ping pong or badminton. So that would be correlational. For my prototype, when he actually comes to the lesson, I will have an actual tennis racket and a ball and the net and the court with the right dimensions. And then I'll also bring pictures of, so those will be my prototypes, and like my positive instances would be, I'll show him a video of an actual tennis game, like maybe in the Olympics or something, to show him that. And then negative instances, I'll bring pictures of like a badminton racket for him to be able to see the difference between those. Yeah, and other pictures like that. Or maybe a racquetball court. That would be different than a tennis ball court. So just being able to show him those and how they're different. Some misconceptions that he could have of tennis, an overgeneralization would be that tennis is any sport that you play with a racket, which, like I said before, there are other games like racquetball or badminton. So that would be an overgeneralization. And then an undergeneralization would be that tennis is only played on outdoor courts, which you can play them indoors. We'll be playing them indoors in the ice center, so it can be played indoors. I know in the Olympics they always play outdoors, so that could be where a misconception would come from, only seeing it played outdoors, but it can be indoors. And lastly, he could get some anxiety, state anxiety, or debilitating anxiety, so to try and keep that from happening, I want to start small, so I'll see where he's at, and then, like with serving, I'll have him start maybe a little bit in front of the serving line to make sure that he can get it over, and then slowly work back. Or if he's already there, then we can have him start at the serving line. And then also just work in steps. So when I'm teaching him the serving technique, maybe we'll start with just throwing the ball and trying to get it at a consistent height for serving, and then focusing on swinging and aiming your swing and things like that, so that it's not overwhelming and I'm not telling him all the steps at once, so that he can remember and focus on all the little details. And then also lastly, so that he doesn't get anxiety, just to always encourage him and give him praise when he does well. And yeah, that is it for my lesson plan.